Poetry of Wonder, a workshop in which we talk about poetry as a life practice, not a high calling, profession, or righteous cause. It's like what Big Mama said to all the children when they came for their report cards. Big Mama lined up all her children to receive their reports. Even the daydreamers had to come, although everyone knew they had wasted their time. First up were the A-types. "You all had a lot going for you," Big Mama said. "And you were a pushy bunch, too. Always front and center, but you've got more work to do. Get on back down the hall." Next up were the Poets and Storytellers. "I had high hopes for you, but every one of you had to write a sequel. Go on back down the hall." The lawyers and politicians didn't wait to be told. They just turned around and went back down the hall, and the lobbyists trailed after them as usual. Only a few daydreamers and other careless types were left. "Don't hang back," said Big Mama. "Come on up for the prizes. You stayed so surprised to be alive that you never turned ideas into entrance requirements for your clubs." And because they were students, Big Mama taught them. While you live on Mother Earth, class is always open. That is, a poetry routine is less about lightning strokes than lightning bugs, less about bolts than sparks. It's a matter of pause, breathe, shift scale. Don't stop the sun on our behalf. More slowly turn us, make us laugh. Make welcome sharp and singular. The kiss by chance, the meal more regular. Suffice these signs to show your presence. That's a prayer. And what I'm calling a daily practice of poetry is a kind of prayer, at least by my definition. Prayer is creative engagement and sustained attention, personal and collaborative, that leads to a cognitive procession from fate to will, ignorance to understanding, grasping to acceptance, waste to salvage, fear to hope, opportunism to compassion, exclusion to inclusion, and partial work to wholehearted soul work. And poetry can help us to sustain attention. Take a breath. Try to inhale as long as you can hear the tone. Now slowly exhale. Wait for the tone to stop before you inhale again. Now quietly observe this. Take a moment to write what you observed. Pause the presentation. When you've finished writing, come back. The poetry of edifices is made of large, definitive works. The poetry of samples is made of breaths and swallows. A daily practice of poetry is a practice of sampling, just as our bodies are communities of cells who continually converse and sample each other, just as peoples continually trade, migrate, and learn from sampling other cultures. One who samples assumes that knowledge is temporary, provisional, and incomplete, and that humans are transient, but curious and able to learn through inference, problems, and delight. Japanese and Indian poets have been concerned with sampling practices. Samvasa, the association, intercourse, or conversation. Rasa, the savoriness of a work of art, the tasting and subsequent reverberation, the hairs on end frisson of emotion in experiencing beauty. Samvega, the shock of wonder felt when the experience of beauty becomes serious, a sense of awe. Maya, a measure, trick, or illusion. It comes from the early days of measurement when quarts and pounds and other units were introduced into the marketplace. They were closely followed by false measures used by cheats and tricksters, hence illusion. In using the mouth and throat to swallow, inhale, savor, and converse, we are sampling and being sampled continually. Kisses and poems are formed in the same way. But why bother to make poems if you're not aiming for the bestseller list? 2 reasons. If you find that you make poetry and then you want to make more, this shows that you derive energy from the pursuit. Words deserve attention. The human project on our planet is to care for each other and to keep our great conversation going. In this project, poets are caretakers of the savor and wonder of words. The practice of poetry is not simply about comfort or amusement, a pastime like crosswords or Sudoku, but a special effort to attend to experiences and to embody them in words carefully chosen, to find words that get the experience right. Poet Thomas Lynch said, "Poetry is the tuning fork for the language." The verbiage used for persuasion in ads, jingles, and slogans is like false measurements used to trick the buyer or to create an illusion. Even though the ads pay well, and the cereal jingle that I just put up apparently was the retirement income for the poet, a Chicago trombonist. The purpose, however, is to deceive or delude, not to take care or to give care. And of course, words may also be weaponized to insult, ridicule, exclude, mislead, and abuse. Sticks and stones may break bones, but names stab deep to hurt us. Civilian warriors, translation, mercenaries. High concept writing, translation, fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it, translation, cheat. Our customer service team is here for you, translation, wait. Yet it is through words that we perceive the world. Words have done all wrong And words put nothing right, yet I am choosing words, driven in the pursuit as birds to winter warm. Words have done us harm, and ill our sickness suit, yet I am using words, angry at the night as darkness on a lung. The words heap up like dung or sudden snow in height, yet I am using words, picking at the cold root of their late sad charm. Words failed even to alarm when doubts swarmed into loot, yet to use words, a listless ear weighed light, I will not go along. No, the world we know and accept is selectively perceived through words, abstractions, concepts, and assumptions. We have trouble simply seeing. Your art teacher may say, draw what you see. But beginners don't do that. Even when a flower is placed in front of them, they draw what they think a flower looks like. And only after practice do students pay attention to the flower. And of course, it would be even more difficult to perceive and draw the flower if your friends and leaders insisted it was not a flower, but a fungible commodity. In the IT world, the expression WYSIWYG is translated, what you see is what you get. But in the world of perception and thinking, it's WYSIWYT. What you see is what you think. Poets don't escape from this fact, by the way. More often than not, poets don't get the facts right. And I have a bone to pick with their tendency to exaggerate and show off. They are prone to pronouncements and lame alliterations, fatally fascinated by puns and zingers. They are nuncios of nuance, priests of precious piffle, howlers, chanters and enchanters, slammers and singers. But I agree with Marion Moore about poetry. I too dislike it, reading it, however, with a perfect contempt for it. One discovers in it, after all, a place for the genuine. So now that you've begun to collect some material for your poem, let's see what can be done to find in it a place for the genuine. That is, to find out how to surprise yourself. Begin with the material you have, what you have observed, what you know, who you are. Realize that discovery favors the prepared mind. Mary Jean Irion entitled this poem At the Briefing for Creation Day. And now, said God, assuming there were forms, and some still do, are there any questions? Said a bird to God. Bones in my wings? Man, are you mad? I gotta fly. Give me stuff like feathers and things. I mean, like I'm crazy with fluff for the high. Said God to that bird. Bones in your wings, and in that particular order. Bones. And in that particular order. Preparation for making a poem begins with getting the wing bones in order. Bones are constraints, resistance, and tension. Bones are structure. The first constraint is the experience itself, a sample of your life. Often the words flow from it immediately. Oh, the blossoms of Yoshino. Or another way of saying that, in a closer look. Kore wa to bakari hana yo Yoshino yo ama. This which is this which is this, thus, oh, blossoms Yoshino's hills. Or, if you want it rhymed, that's all, that's all, upon the blossomed, covered hills of Yoshino. Now, even from my poor Japanese, you can tell that the poem does not rhyme in the original. Teishitsu is awestruck by the sight of the blossom-covered hills. He is at a loss for words. He immediately responds. The savor of the poem is that the awesome experience which has hollowed the words out of him is nevertheless embodied in words. It is like Gertrude Stein's poem, what I think not now, but now. Oh yes, now. This which I think now is this. In an encounter with the ineffable, a desert sunset, the grand Tetons, the blue earth from space, you are left speechless. Usually, however, experiences do not speak for themselves. A poet has to do some work. So another bone is research. Your experience has made you pay attention to things related to it. That is, it has turned up your selective perception. You already have a researcher's eyes for noticing what is relevant to the experience you want to embody in the poem. Now consider this new material for a few minutes, and you can pause and then pause again to look through the 2 pages. Try to apply these findings to your original notes for the poem, and then return to the presentation. Sometimes research bogs you down by introducing extraneous information, but ideally it will fine-tune your selective perception. You will become more ready to pay attention. So let's put some more of the wing bones of your poem in order. There's the experience that makes you want to write the poem, the heightened attention, the research, and then the question of how to do it. Which words, in what order? What is said first? What holds it together? What will translate an experience that you felt into a series of words that will make someone else feel that they had the same experience or guide them to have their own experience? These are formal considerations. Unfortunately, like research, tricky forms may also endanger the poem by introducing extraneous material. Think of playing Scrabble or chess. One player has a grand strategy, another plays move by move. Confident poets like Taishitsu or Marion Moore easily fell back on grand strategies that suited them. Moore counts syllables per line, and Taishitsu uses the haiku form. Here's another haiku. Fallen petals rise, back to the branch I watch. Oh, butterflies. In form, this consists of 3 lines of 5, 7, and 5 syllables. In the original, there is no rhyme, and Japanese dispenses with many elements like plurals and pronouns. Season must always be indicated, so spring is shown by several key words like petals and butterflies, the kigo words, as they're called. Haiku is part of an ongoing conversation both between human beings and with other beings. With minimal clues and highly condensed thought, this haiku alludes to a scholarly text which had stated that once a petal has fallen, it does not return to the branch. Notice how the first two lines show the poet's aroused curiosity, and the last line shows a surprise about what he has actually seen. Finally, notice that the haiku is essentially a comparison between the falling petals and the rising butterflies, each considered fully on its own. These formal elements, lines, syllables, season, allusion, compactness, curiosity, comparison, and surprise, are found in most examples of this highly formalized verse. But in fact, they're found also in English verse. True wit is nature to advantage dressed, what oft was thought, but ne'er so well expressed. Here's a highly structured form of English verse, a heroic couplet from the Enlightenment period. The grand strategy is to use 5 iambic feet per line and end rhymes with allusion to the manners and thought of the time, conciseness, and lines that embody the thought they convey. The Quran is also partly written in rhyming couplets, by the way. Indeed, the Bible is composed of abundant literary forms. Yet, when we open our ordinary versions, we look in vain for the lyrics, epics, dramas, essays, sonnets, treatises, which make up the other great literatures of the world. Instead of these, the eye catches nothing but a monotonous uniformity of numbered sentences, more suggestive of an itemized legal instrument. Moulton's version presents the biblical content in recognizable forms, such as free verse. Who are these that fly as a cloud and as the doves to their windows? Do you not know how the buds beneath are folded, waiting in gloom protected by frost? While many strategies are available in English and American literature, your aim is to embody your experience, to make a sample to be savored, a surprising discovery. Pouring words into a formal mold may or may not achieve that aim. Choosing form is more than deciding whether to write a quatrain or a sonnet. Choosing form is deciding how you will limit or constrain your expression, which bones, and in which order. Poetic conventions arise from demand. The Norman courtiers of the 11th century wanted to hear about heroic aristocrats, presumably like themselves, who spontaneously declaimed love poems in complicated rhyme schemes like sestinas. Renaissance poets entertained aristocratic patrons with sonnets. After the Industrial Revolution had turned Britain into a giant factory, romantic poets produced ballads and pastoral odes about a vanishing habitat and way of life. In our corpocratic times, following world wars, amid continuing violence and environmental havoc, poets search for new forms. One of the most widely read poets is Helen Steiner Rice. Her poetic niche, greeting card verse. She certainly has more readers than Georgian poets, war poets, imagists, modernists, beat poets, Zen poets, surrealists, and the hip-hop school. The Russian poet Kirsanoff called poetry an ambulance rushing to save someone. Now, while Ms. Steiner Rice may be criticized on aesthetic grounds, her poems have saved some of her readers. Traditional form does not have to be associated with dated content. Putting an old form to new purposes may even lead to creative tension. W.H. Auden does this in his letter to Lord Byron, where he modifies the ottava rima stanzas of Byron's Don Juan to address current issues. I even tried it. After reading and being required to read many poems in the epic form, I decided to make an epic suited to our conflicted times. Here's a poem with history, as epics have been called, not elevated, but constrained. The cavalry's milled down like flax, and fallen horses shriek all night long outside the wire. Impatient with smart riding crops, polish and pretense, taste changed. Speak plain, deliver sense. Find a quiet eye to hold the center. Life's the theme. Protect, defend, and cultivate. Whether at the edge or flanks or low crawl in the hedge, the front, the rear, the home front dance, the fish that would not detonate, the canvas drained of faces, the tone row cracked from melody, the hill where Haber watched his gas seep yellow into lungs, or where you sit with jittering eyes. Life's the theme, the only prize. This is the first of 33 stanzas. An epic is a poem dealing with history, warfare, heroes, and the consequences of decisions. Since the First World War and books like Remarques, All Quiet on the Western Front, it has not been possible to write that kind of epic. So the choice of epic form to tell about our times sets up creative tension between the old form and the current viewpoint. Creative tension is another kind of constraint or wing bone. You don't need an elaborate format. You can create your own. For example, each of the 33 stanzas follows the same syllable scheme and uses both internal and end rhyme. But commitment to a grand strategy raises the stakes for the poet. Can you meet the challenge you've set? Is it a workable pattern? Will the hidden bones of your poem make it fly, even to places you don't expect? Of course, only you will know about the hidden patterns. Like the hidden mortise and tenon in a table or chest of drawers, only the maker knows. The bones in the wings stay hidden. The poem should be palpable and mute, like a globe fruit, dumb as old medallions to the thumb, silent as the sleeve-worn stone of casement ledges where the moss has grown. A poem should be wordless as the flight of birds. The grand strategy approach is not an excuse, however, to stop shaping the poem. Even within a complicated form, as in playing chess, every move offers opportunities and surprises. Being open to these invitations leads to sudden turns and rewrites. Many rewrites. In other words, the grand strategy approach and the move-by-move approach usually go together. Poets like Lorca and Rilke are open to wild associations. I want to describe myself like a painting that I saw a few feet off, and close up, like a word that I finally understood, like a picture I use every day, like the face of my mother. Shaping such poems may draw on the painting or sculpture techniques. A poem may also draw upon the storytelling techniques as an anchor for more abstract observation. Here, Marion Moore uses a familiar story to embody the purity and directness of nature in contrast to human complexities and self-confusion. Not in the days of Adam and Eve, but when Adam was alone, when there was no smoke and color was fine, not with the refinement of early civilization art, but because of its originality, with nothing to modify it but the mist that went up. Obliqueness was a variation of the perpendicular, plain to see and to account for. It is no longer that. Nor did the blue, red, yellow band of incandescence keep its stripe. It also is one of those things into which much that is peculiar can be read. Complexity is not a crime, but carry it to the point of murkiness, and nothing is plain. Spend a little more time observing. As you take notes, be open to invitations from form, story, creative tension, wild associations, and research. You can stop the presentation, pause it, and then come back. Two more constraints, or wing bones, and then we're done. The first, a forced or intrusive comparison. We often set experiences aside and later have another experience that brings it all back and sparks a new insight. So I want you to watch the following video with the intention to see it in terms of the previous observation. And of course, as usual, you can pause the presentation while you're writing after this observation. The last constraint is other people's poems. Looking at other poems related to the experience you are trying to express is a way of opening up a conversation. You may do this by talking with other poets or simply by reading. I don't know whether you will find this encouraging or discouraging. Like all experiences, it is a matter of breathing properly and maintaining a quiet mind. As Jane Hirschfeld counsels us, since the ultimate surprise is to learn something, we must practice openness. I let breathing remind me to welcome experiences and see them as resources. And by that I mean inhale. To ponder and compress the experience. And by that I mean hold the breath. To embody and release the experience. And by that I mean exhale. And to hold the space remaining. And by that I mean ponder the emptiness and the relief that you feel. Hold the emptiness by not inhaling immediately. So here are several poems related to the experience that you are trying to embody in words. After reading each of them aloud, I will pause to give you a little time for notes, and then we will finish. The dance songs of the bees, to tell where the flowers suddenly in the morning light have opened. Rise. One thing happens, then another, in the long, slow rise. So many hands reach out and lift us over fallen branches, hidden drops, hard crops of stone. The moon tilts up its yellow chin. The clouds disperse. We grow into a face our mothers recognize as someone else, a father's father, sister's sister. Nobody is single in this world. That's all we know, we'll ever know. About the ways we come and go. We're pulled to presence by a doctor's urgent, gentle hands. We're laid to sleep and covered over. Nobody's alone. I'm here with you. Here, reaching for your fingers, holding on. Therefore this masterhood, this piece of perfect song, this fault not found with good, is neither right nor wrong, no more than red and blue, no more than Ray and me, or sweet the golden glue that's built for by the bee who built these walls, made known the music of his mind. Yet here he hath but shown his ruder rounded rind. His brightest blooms lie there, unblown, his sweetest nectar hides behind. Sometimes he'd no more grasp than that bee who for the life of her couldn't find her way out of an open window, even on a trail of jelly down the screen. Earlier, when the sun was mid-high, the afternoon warmer, the sweet grass buzzing, she poked and plodded on the wires, her antennae lazily quivering on a whim, like a little ritual to remind herself she was lost in the warm sun. But since she didn't feel the pain of mortal separation, she continued more or less to follow the same course, hang-stepping from one wire to another, falling along the molding to a right angle at top, as if the quarter-inch it rose above the screen were an impasse. She dutifully would turn right and continue following alongside. Later, when the sun was eye level, the bee flew over the molding, bumping the screen. Maybe this was her escape. She would find the free edge, feel her belly buoy up into the air, and fly off to the sun. But she only lit on the screen again. She tripped a cobweb signal cord, but the spider returned quickly to the darkness of the window latch. Now she hung from the center of the frame. Her antennae drooped like two low horns. She rubbed them with her front legs. Like velvet piling, they still bristled. Light came through the window trapezoidal. The sun was behind a storm cloud, and the bee had flown up to the top of the screen, rear legs dragging, plated belly pumping, her wings back along her sides. She wore a downy sun-gold fur, and walking on her middle feet, she rocked from side to side. Take a few moments to add to your notes. Okay, this has been a short session about making a practice of poetry as a way of paying attention to existence. Of course, not everyone draws energy from this practice, so I encourage you to find a practice that suits you. Remember, all right, no bird soars too high if he soars with his own wings.